Before modern medicine illuminated the world, before vaccines became our shield, there was a small word that carried enormous fear. Its roots lie in ancient Greek, polios meaning gray, referring to the gray matter of the spinal cord that it attacks. Over centuries, this word transformed into something darker, heavier, and more terrifying. Polio, a disease so quiet, so invisible, that it could steal a child's future without ever announcing its arrival. In a warm little town where streets curled between simple houses and children's voices danced with the wind, lived a boy named Ion. He was 5 years old, curious, energetic, and always asking questions. His favorite game was racing with his friends. Every afternoon he would draw a finish line on dusty ground. But one morning, life changed in a way his family never imagined. It began with a mild fever. His mother touched his forehead and whispered, "It's probably the weather." She gave him warm soup, tucked him into bed, and sang him to sleep. But by evening, the fever grew sharper, and Ion felt strange pains shooting down his legs. He tried to stand but felt his knees tremble as if the earth had suddenly become too heavy. His father carried him in his arms, worried but hopeful that it was just fatigue. The next morning, the sun rose, but Ion's strength did not. His legs felt weak, his feet wouldn't obey. His father called his name, but Ion could barely move. Fear rushed through the house like a cold wind. They rushed to the nearest hospital, where doctors examined him immediately. After tests and whispers, the doctor finally turned to his parents, his voice soft but heavy. "This looks like poliomyelitis, polio." Silence fell like a stone. His mother's heart collapsed. His father stared at the floor, the word echoing in his mind, polio, a disease people feared but thought was disappearing. Polio is a tiny virus, one that slips into the body through contaminated water or food. It travels silently, swimming through the bloodstream, invading cells. Most people never feel it. It passes like a shadow, no symptoms, no sign. But for some, especially young children, it becomes a storm that tears through the nervous system. It attacks the very core of movement, the spinal cord. Muscles weaken, limbs stop responding. Breathing becomes a fight, and in the worst cases, paralysis becomes permanent. Ion's parents listened as the doctor explained everything. There was no cure, only treatment to manage symptoms and help his recovery. But prevention exists, the doctor reminded them gently. Vaccination is the key. Just a few drops could have protected him. The words pierced his father's heart. He remembered the vaccination team that visited their neighborhood months ago. He remembered hesitating, thinking it was not important. Now the guilt felt crushing. Days turned into weeks. Ion stayed in the hospital, receiving treatment, warm compresses, physiotherapy sessions, and constant monitoring. His small body struggled, but his spirit remained strong. He smiled whenever his parents entered the room. He held their hands tightly, as if fighting not just the virus but the fear that surrounded them. The doctor explained how polio behaves differently in different regions. In areas with poor sanitation, it spreads quickly. In crowded places, it travels like an invisible ghost. Young children are the most vulnerable because their immune systems are still developing. That's why vaccination campaigns focus on children under 5. He said, they are the ones polio tries to attack first. Outside the hospital, the battle against polio was happening on a global scale. The World Health Organization considered it one of the greatest public health challenges. Teams of workers traveled to deserts, mountains, flooded villages, war zones, places where roads barely existed to ensure every child received the polio drops. Some crossed rivers. Others walked for miles carrying coolers full of vaccines, knocking on doors one by one. Their mission was simple: no child left unprotected. Ion's parents learned that many countries had eliminated polio completely. They were close to making history, the second disease ever eradicated after smallpox. But a few regions, including theirs, still reported cases. Conflict, misinformation, fear, and lack of access kept the virus alive. If even one child remained unvaccinated, polio could return and spread again like wildfire. Meanwhile, Ion's journey continued. Physiotherapists worked with him daily, helping his legs strengthen inch by inch. His mother massaged his limbs with warm oil every evening, whispering prayers and stories. His father stayed beside him, holding his hands during painful exercises, cheering him on whenever he lifted his legs even slightly. One night, Ion looked at his parents and asked, "Why did this happen to me?" His father's eyes filled with tears. He held Ion close and whispered, "So that others may learn, so that no other child goes through this pain." The weeks turned into months. Slowly, Ion learned to stand again with support. His steps were shaky, but each one felt like a victory. His determination inspired everyone around him. Nurses smiled when he entered the hallway. Other children waved. His mother cried the first time he took 3 steps on his own. One afternoon, the doctor visited him with a smile. "You are brave, Ion. You fought a battle most children never see, and you won, but the world was fighting a bigger battle, one that required unity, awareness, and action." Vaccination was not just a medical procedure. It was a promise to protect children like Ion, who, UNICEF, volunteer workers, and local health departments continued their campaigns relentlessly. They knew polio had no cure but could be stopped completely if everyone played their part. Ion eventually returned home, The first thing he did was walk slowly but proudly to the playground. His friends gathered around him, surprised and excited. He couldn't run like before, but his smile was stronger than ever. He sat under a tree and told them his story. The pain, the fear, the doctors, the recovery. His voice shook, but his message was clear. Get your polio drops. Don't miss them. They save you. Years later, Ion's story spread beyond his town. Teachers shared it in schools. Health workers narrated it to families. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even when life bends, it doesn't always break. And now, here you are, listening to this story. A story that began with a small word from ancient Greek and grew into a global mission. A story that reminds us how fragile a child's life can be and how powerful a few drops of vaccine are. Imagine a world where every child can run freely, where no parent cries in a hospital room fearing paralysis, where the word polio becomes nothing more than a chapter in history books. That world is within reach. We stand at the final steps of eradicating polio forever. Only a few cases remain. Victory is closer than ever before. But victory needs commitment. It needs awareness. It needs vaccination. It needs people like you, listening, learning, and sharing. Let Ion's journey remind us that prevention is stronger than fear, stronger than disease, stronger than the past. A drop of vaccine is not just medicine, it is hope, protection, and a promise of a brighter future. And maybe, someday soon, we will tell our children, there was once a disease called polio, but the world united, and together, we ended it forever.